Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It, a podcast created by the FUSE, an outreach initiative within the College of Applied Studies and recorded on campus at the Elliott School of Communication here at Wichita State University. I'm Bobby Berry.
And I'm Jessica Newman. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About It. In today's episode, we will be discussing a special population of college students, adult learners. The needs in this community differ dramatically from what a traditional 18 to 22-year-old student might need. So we just want to know what services and what resources Wichita State provides to help support this group of students who are often juggling school along with a full-time job or a family or many other stressors that may or may not be present in a more traditional population. So here to dig into this with us is Pamela O'Neill, Associate Director of the Wichita State Office of Adult Learning. Thanks for joining us, Pam.
Well, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome. So could you just begin by giving us a brief overview of what your office does for our campus community?
Sure. So I always tell everyone we help students who are usually 24 and older come back to Wichita State to finish that or even at sometimes start their first bachelor's degree. And so we provide resources for them, which includes scholarships. We provide printing for students. We have a resource room. And we also have special pamphlets hanging up for them as well. Some of the other services that our office provides is that when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, we have a coffee bar.
Nice.
And so that we know, and I know firsthand, being an adult learner myself, how we love and need our caffeine. So we make sure that that's fully stocked at all times. We also have the Joe Stone Lounge, which is a lounge created just for our adult learners, and it was named after Joe Stone, who is the oldest graduate at Wichita State University. He received his bachelor's in, get this, communication at the Elliott School. I believe it was in 2003, but he came back to get his degree, and so we kind of use that as the, we hear so many students say, gosh, I'm going to be the oldest one here. And I'm like, no, you're not. And I show them our Joe Stone Lounge. And I talk about my own experiences coming back at 31 years old to get my degree. And just having that reassurance is big for them. So while we provide all those resources, I think one of the biggest things that we provide for them is a sense of place, a sense of community, and that reassurance that they can do it, and identifying with them and saying, I've been in your shoes, I know what that's like, you can do this, and I will help you get there.
Absolutely. And so you may have mentioned this and maybe I missed it, but how old was Joe Stone?
Gosh, I always get the dates and everything mixed up, but about 93, I believe.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd have to go back and look, but
Wow.
yeah, it definitely in its 90s.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow, impressive. So, Pam, do you happen to know the percentage of our student population, both undergraduate and graduate students who are adult learners here?
I definitely know the undergraduate population. We haven't really got into the graduate population because the graduate school, once you get into there, you're almost automatically an adult learner.
Right.
But I will tell you this, for the undergraduates, we hover right about between 20 and 25% of the student body.
Wow.
Yeah. So, a student who is, or an adult learner who's sitting in class is more than likely to have another adult learner in class. And that's something that I always try to stress to potential students, saying you're not going to be the only one in class.
Right.
And if you are, it's a bonus, I tell them, for the other students, because I've seen it firsthand. Teaching, I used to teach public speaking here at Wichita State, and I have seen the traditional students gravitate to the adult learner in the classroom, looking for that real life experience that they know an adult learner
Absolutely.
can provide.
And as a person who teaches classes regularly, I often have adult learners in my class and the perspective in which they bring to the topic of conversation is always valuable as well, because they're looking at it through a different lens, or looking through it as a lens of someone who's experienced, not to say that their experiences differ greatly, but the fact that they've lived longer and still have had different types of experiences, and they've been able to identify and evaluate those experiences a little bit more clearly at times. And so that's always an added bonus for even me as a professor, being in a room, being able to have those opinions in my room.
Right, to have that, when you're working in a job and you can say, oh yeah, this has happened at my workplace and this is how they handled it, especially from, whether it be a communication standpoint or a business standpoint. It's always interesting to hear those adult learners talk about their experiences and talk about how it has affected them.
Yeah, there's definitely some diversity of thought there that
Absolutely.
you wouldn't have.
Definitely.
So that's a good portion of our student body. And 25%, you're talking 1 out of every 4 students. So
right.
For those students, what do you find are some of the greatest needs that they have when it comes to education? And then along with that, how does your office identify or assess the needs of each specific adult learner, when they walk into your office?
Good question. So the needs of our adult learners are similar to traditional students, but go a little bit above and beyond that, in that, like a traditional student, an adult learner needs the funding to come to Wichita State or to any college as far as that goes. And so that's why we have the Osher Scholarship, which is specifically for someone who has at least 5 years of experience being out of education. So
Okay.
that can be, someone who might have gone to college right after high school and then skipped out a few years and tried it again, skipped a few years. So that's been a huge bonus, I guess, for students coming in. And then very closely related is childcare.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because one, childcare is expensive, and then trying to find someone to take care of your child while you're taking classes, while you're going to work and doing all this, they're just juggling multiple priorities.
Yeah.
So those are 2 of the items, I guess, if you will, that I hear adult learners express concern about. Something that they don't always see until they get started is that juggling of time, multiple priorities, and how difficult that is. Mm-hmm. And so next week, I'll be partnering with the Office of Online Learning, and we will be hosting a webinar where we talk about, how to do that. So we've got some of those resources as well for our adult learners. I know you had mentioned. Yeah. And then I felt there's a second part of that question, and how do I identify those needs, right?
Yeah. How do you help each person know what they specifically need? So
one of the things that I have noticed right away from my adult learners is that when they come in, they will start to tell me their story. And that is invaluable because I think, one, they are a little embarrassed that they didn't finish the first time. And so they explain why they didn't. And I'm glad to know that because that helps me identify those barriers that might be standing in the way and help me help them find solutions to that. Another way that we do that is through, of course, social media. And I'm always going to conferences, talking to other offices and other adult learners in the whole United States, getting my hands on any kind of reading material that I can, doing the research, and also writing a dissertation about first-generation adult learners and doing that. So that's kind of helped me identify, what they need, and then I can take that back to my office. And more times than not, our population will reflect what's going on in the United States and help them, whether it's through a mentoring program or something like that, find the resources that they need to help them succeed.
So you were clearly invested in the work, to say the least.
Yeah, a little bit.
One of the things kind of that I wanted to, as you were talking, that made me think, I know you referenced earlier you being an adult learner as yourself.
Yes.
Was that the reason why you kind of navigated to this particular role? What was that like for you?
Absolutely. So after I got my master's here, at the Elliott School in communication, after I got my bachelor's and my master's, I went on to get my master's of public health. And started talking to a woman who was at the School of Nursing, and she was the chair there. And we talked about the RN to BSN program. Well, if you think about it, registered nurses who are coming back to get their Bachelor's of Science in Nursing are automatically, most of the time, adult learners, right?
Sure.
So I started working for her. And so I was already working with adult learners. And then it's so funny because she talked to which is now my former boss, and said, hey, I've got this new person and she's working with this population, adult learners. And she introduced me to Susan Norton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Susan was our director who helped, start the Office of Adult Learning. And through that, I got to know Susan, and then, this position came open for the Office of Adult Learning. And I hated leaving the School of Nursing, but I knew that's where I belonged. I've always felt very welcomed at Wichita State and through every office. But, when you find your people, your tribe, and I knew that I would have that experience and I could talk to adult learners because in 2002 I came to Wichita State University, and this is what I tell many of my adult learners. I remember I walked into the office. There was a West Campus, but it was at Central and Ridge at that time. And I said, I want to write for newspaper. And that's what I told them. And so they said, well, you want to be a communication major then? I said, okay. And they said, well, you can get started in the summer. You can take, a class. And I said, that's all I want. I just want to take one class to see if I'm smart enough. It'd been 13 years to get my degree. That's how low at that time my self-confidence was. And so I took English 101 that summer of 2002, and I ended up getting an A in it. And I thought, well, I guess I can try one more. And from then on, it just kind of grew. I took that 102, did as well in there, and I thought, well, maybe I can take 9 hours in the fall. And finally worked myself up to taking full-time hours while working full-time at a local printing company. And so I talked to my adult learners, and when I hear that self-doubt, it's for someone who had it. I think now that I'm working my doctorate, I have almost got that confidence, that, hey, maybe I can do this. But that's what I tell them, and I can identify with it and say, just take one class then.
Yeah.
What was your favorite class in high school, or what do you feel you're good at? Let's start you out with one class and see how it goes.
And I think a lot of the times in those situations that we often find not only are there barriers in general in education, just in general, but those self-limiting barriers as well,
sure.
Happen to sometimes be the highest barriers for us to be able to climb over to actually feel successful. Not that we aren't, but to feel successful. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. I love hearing your story and how you apply that to students, because I feel like that kind of empathetic perspective is what helps people feel at home, feel like, okay, she gets me. She understands, that if someone's saying, well, no, I don't think I can do this, and somebody else says, yes, you can, they might say, well, you don't understand what I've been through, but you do understand,
I do. Yeah.
I'm sure that they appreciate that. And I've seen you, in the Office of Adult Learning for many years now, and I feel like you just seem so at home. You just seem so, in your element there with them.
Yeah.
So we were talking about barriers for students in coming to college. One big giant barrier for everyone has been COVID, with the switch to online and hybrid courses and everything else that a global pandemic brings along with it. So talk specifically about how COVID has impacted your adult learning population.
I can think of one student in particular. He is a gentleman 60 years old and had been incarcerated for a number of years.
Wow.
Yeah, and when he came back, he really didn't know much about computers, and understandably so.
Right.
Luckily, I have some student assistants who are very passionate about helping adult learners, but they're also traditional students in the fact that they really understand these, the computers and Zoom and all the technology. And so what we found was some of our students going, uh-oh, what do I do? And they came to us, and we were able to either, set them up with a laptop or say, okay, this is Zoom. This is how you do it. And we still do that for many of our students, even pre-COVID. But I think we saw an influx of that.
Yeah.
And so what I ended up doing, they knew how to email most of them. And I said, if you have any problems, email me. There are several of them. I gave my cell phone number out. I said, text me if you need anything. And I would text several of them about once a week and say, you guys doing okay? And I know that one of my students had a friend who committed suicide during that time.
Wow.
And so I had reached out to him and I said, how's it going? And he told me. So we were able to communicate. But I think it's just knowing your students and making sure that they are connected. And so that's how we've been able to help them is, setting up our office hours, making sure that they know how to get a hold of us. I know that some of them are, they're not only now working from home, they're homeschooling and they're taking classes themselves. But I've also heard some of my students say, well, while my son is working on his homework, so am I.
Yeah.
And my son gets to see me, and what greater, example can I provide? I can't just tell my son or my daughter or my children to go to school unless I do it myself and they see me studying. And so while sometimes that might feel like it's a barrier, sometimes I believe it's kind of a catalyst or a kind of a reason to get that degree.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's powerful. I think leading by example.
Yes.
There's definitely some power in that. And so as we kind of think about this, I mean, there's so many fears, right, that your average traditional college student has as they enter an institution. And when you think about that as a returning adult and trying to obtain their first degree, an additional degree, or just even go to graduate school, what words of advice would you give to those who may be hesitant or, maybe scared to return to college?
Come talk to me.
Find Pam.
No, it's the old saying, just do it. But sometimes that's, not really enough. But I start talking to them and tell them, if you come see me or if you come into my office, we will help. And telling them my story, and I say, I know where you've been. I know it's intimidating, but you're probably smarter than you think you are, and you have so much experience to give to those students. So the words of advice, basically just do it and come see me.
We're going to make sure they come see you, Pam.
Take the help. It's interesting, we have these resources, and I think that's something that Bobby and I are hoping to do with this podcast too, is draw attention to the many opportunities and the many resources that we have on campus.
Absolutely.
You all do a great job of, reaching out to students intentionally and marketing and all of that. But at the same time, you can't help people you don't know about. So, so that said, if they want to come find Pam, how can we do that? Are there resources? Are there things that people can
all
do?
Over the place. So, of course, you can connect with us on social media. We have the Office of Adult Learning Facebook page, but and we have Twitter with the Office of Adult Learning. But the biggest thing, I think, would be call our office at 316-978-8325. You can email us at adultlearning@wichita.edu. So it's adultlearning at wichita.edu.
Excellent.
And then, of course, you can always call me. My direct line is 316-978-8315. And I can give you my email address, but it's Pamela, PAMELA.ONEAL @wichita.edu.
That's a good pro tip, is that if you know someone's name and they work at Wichita State, you know their email address.
Right.
Typically, unless they have like a nickname or like,
or
it's like
an
Charles
O'Neill.
And Chuck.
There is no apostrophe.
True.
In my email address. And I've had people, I've emailed you. And I said, you put the apostrophe in my last name? Yeah. Yeah, that's why.
That I could see it. If there's apostrophes or hyphens or something like that, that could throw people off.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Pam, for taking time to come speak with us today. And additionally, thank you for so much for the work that you do for the students on our campus and the passion that you do it with. So once again, have a great rest of your day. And once again, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, let's move on to a discussion with two of our own WSU adult learners. So today we have Scott Anderson with us, who is currently pursuing a degree in sport management. And then we also have Amanda Hackerott, who is a recent graduate from our Workforce Leadership and Applied Learning program. So thank you to both of you for coming on the show today.
Yep, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
So let's first start with what made you want to take the leap of faith and come back to college and complete your education? So what was that motivation like for you? And I'm going to start with you, Scott.
I just finally reached a point where I was ready to pursue something I was passionate about, and something I'm passionate about is sports. So decided I wanted to spend the rest of my career working in something I deeply care about, and so I finally just made the decision to come back to school.
And what was that like for you, Amanda? What was your driving force and your motivation?
To be real, it was a lot of imposter syndrome I was feeling at work, and everybody had better degrees and knew more than me, and I felt like I just needed to get to a higher level, both personally and professionally.
Now, was this a decision that you had contemplated for a while? Did you kind of, just say, oh, okay, I've been wrestling with this for about a year or so let me just do it now? Or what was that process like for you to say, yes, I'm doing it?
Yeah, it actually worked out perfectly because I heard WSU had this 2+2 program, so I could pair my associate's degree, experience and background with this new bachelor's degree. So that was a big playing factor in me returning to school, because I knew I didn't want to go back for another entire 4 years. I just didn't think I could make that work.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Scott? What was your deciding factor ultimately?
Ultimately, working in the natural gas industry, I had been taking a lot of training on the side to eventually try and get promoted within natural gas, and I finally just reached a point like thinking, do I really want to spend the rest of my working career in natural gas? And I came to the conclusion that no, that was not going to be the case. And so I just finally just changed directions and just jumped in headfirst into the sport management program.
Right.
So, so it sounds like you kind of did a 180 and switched industries entirely by going back to school. Amanda, are you staying in the same industry? Are you keeping the same job and just working towards promotion and advancement in that?
Sort of, kind of. My industries definitely changed slightly. My background is in veterinary medicine. I'm a registered veterinary nurse, and I got into education and academia kind of as a lucky strike in life, really. But I again looked at everybody in education at the college level and thought I just wasn't good enough yet. So how could I make myself better? And the degree in education and experience that brings definitely makes me feel like I'm on a better playing field and would help, I think, with climbing that ladder.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So Scott, what was it for you? I mean, I know you said you have a natural passion for sport. And so, random question, how did you even get involved in the gas industry?
Well, that's a
or
great
natural
question.
gas industry?
That is a good question. It kind of a little bit of a family thing. My dad works in natural gas, and I'll be quite honest. You see what kind of money comes through natural gas,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw opportunity where by getting in natural gas, I could make a solid living for myself without a college degree and without the college debt as well. So that's kind of just the route I went. Through my dad, I was able to make those firsthand connections and get a foot in the door. And so that's how I got there to begin with.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I guess I know you personally. I just have never ever asked you that question before.
Right, yeah.
So we were talking to Pam O'Neill from the Office of Adult Learning earlier, and about some of the biggest fears that adult learners have when they start the process of returning to college. So I'm going to start this with you, Amanda. What was your biggest fear about returning to college?
Math.
That'd be mine too.
All the math classes I was going to have to take, and that was stressing me out hardcore, but I had to do it, and failure and giving up is not an option,
Yeah.
so I was going to figure it out one way or another.
Yeah.
But that was it.
And Scott, what was your biggest fear?
Kind of the same thing. Failure, I guess. Just at my age, it's a little different thinking about the possibility of failure because I've already lost that much time as it is. And so if you fail, you add in more time to the clock there. So that was my biggest fear, is just that much longer to get where I want to be in life.
Now, Amanda mentioned that she had previously obtained an associate's degree. Had you done any college work prior to this?
Yeah, I had attended a few community colleges.
Okay.
Like I said, I had originally took a few classes for business management to try and use that to promote myself within the natural gas industry, but I finally decided natural gas is not where I want to end up in life, so I ended up leaving.
So the fear of failure is kind of where both of your guys' brains were at, and that echoes what Pam was telling us as well, that seems to be the biggest theme of what adult learners are afraid of. So now that you're here and either completing your degree or, Amanda, in your case, have completed your degree, did those thoughts or fears subside or shift or change in any way once you got here? And let's start with Scott on this one.
Yeah, I kind of had those fears all the way up until day one when I took my very first on-campus class with Bobby. After I kind of actually got a taste of what it's like to be on campus and sit through an actual class, I kind of started feeling a lot better and more confidence of like, yeah, I can do this, because that had been the first time I'd been in a classroom in about 10 plus years.
Yeah.
So the uncertainty going into it, but I felt like I could approach Bobby and be able to talk to him, and that helped out a lot and helped take away a lot of the fear.
Yeah. If your first class was with Bobby, you know you're in good hands, right?
Sometimes.
And what about you, Amanda?
It got better for sure. I think a lot like Scott said, just seeing other people in class, having that interaction with students online, in my case, as I was an online student, but then also getting really good feedback from my instructors helped me feel like, okay, I've kind of got this. I can do it. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I wonder this. So when you guys talk about this fear, when you talk about, you know, your confidence improving as you worked through this process, ultimately, what do you feel like was the biggest contributor of your fear? Was it the fact, okay, and I'm going to be in a room with a whole bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds? Was it the fear of, I did this before, I didn't finish, or now? You know, what was kind of the root of your fear, if you don't mind me asking, Amanda?
Yeah, gosh, I would say it again goes back to just that personal, am I good enough?
Yeah.
And it's such a crazy concept when I'm thinking, you know, I'm so close to 40, let's be honest here, and I'm still feeling like a teenager in some regards of, can I do it? Am I good enough? So it is just in that personal spot. For me, it goes back to dropping out of high school when I was a junior, and even just getting my associate's degree was such a huge accomplishment for me. And then to come back at a university level, something I never really thought about growing up, it again was, am I even good enough to be here? And that, it went away. Pats on the back, those comments from instructors, it all made such a big difference.
Yeah, that's, thank you for sharing that, by the way, but the fact that you know, even with the career, because I've seen you do your job and you do it very well. Like before she was even a student here at the institution, I had actually, it was what was it? What was the...
Was it a group it was a youth group of some sort, and we did STEM. Right,
exactly. Yeah. So just seeing the way she engaged, so to hear that, and it's always interesting to me because sometimes when you don't know a person, hearing those stories and kind of their journey just makes it that much more important, the work that they're doing here and the initiative that you took. So definitely kudos to you. And Scott, what was the stemming, the root of your fear coming back?
When I first got out of high school, I tried a community college right off the bat, and but I went into it not knowing what I wanted to do in life, and so my heart wasn't into it, and quite frankly, I hated it, absolutely hated it. And so obviously, if you hate it and don't want to be there, you're probably not going to perform well. And so I did terrible, and so that was a big shot in my confidence. To where I didn't believe that college was for me. But I'm a completely different person now than when at 19 years old.
Right.
Now I'm 33, and I'm not that same young kid anymore. I'm a little bit more mature, and but you still, that sticks in the back of your mind when you're trying to get back into school. Well, I tried it once and I failed, but it's a different mentality now.
Yeah. The fact that you are even at a point where you have decided to follow your passion, I think that's key right there, because a lot of people stick with careers that they're not happy in for the sake of not wanting to start over, or because they're scared to start over. So the fact that you took that and you were able to tap into that and pursue something that you're passionate about, I love to see that.
For sure.
That imposter syndrome, I'll tell you what, it takes all of us down, doesn't it?
For sure. So back to the topic at hand. So what makes attending college now different than when you last attended? So Scott, you're currently going through the thick of it. So what is now different than when you were here before?
Well, just different now. I mean, for me, sitting in a classroom, and it's painfully obvious that I'm the oldest in the group, even in some cases as old as the professor, and that's a little bit weird to think about. But just the whole experience is much better now. Like I said, more mature now, and so it's just a whole different mindset going into it.
Anything different for you, Amanda, when you were here than when you were last sitting in a classroom?
Tons is different. I would say my brain, though, it does go back to that maturity level, conceptual thinking that at 35, 36, I was more suited to learn those crazy algebraic concepts than I ever was at 17. So that's one thing, but then also the resources, I would say, and I'm going to plug Alpha Sigma Lambda, the Honor Society for Adult Learners. That group was really quite integral to me just feeling part of something, and then also knowing that there's other adults with kids and full-time jobs struggling through business or math or whatever it is that you can text and just vent to. So having resources, I guess, was something I didn't really have. In my associate's program, it was pretty much like sink or swim. Here's your books, do or die.
Yeah. And I'm going to echo that. So the sense of connection and things that you were able to attribute that to. But Scott, you as well. So I know you're doing internships. You're part of student government now. So if you can just talk a little bit about getting involved and connected even as a returning adult student.
Yeah, that in itself was a little bit challenging. When you come on campus, you think, how can I, connect with people so much younger than myself? But I've kind of just had to go out there and take a shot at it anyway. And like you said, I got in student government and a couple internships with the Wichita Thunder and Wichita State Athletics right now. But even if I felt like, even if I couldn't make the connections with my fellow classmates, I've felt more than comfortable to reach out to my teachers along the way. You, Bobby, for sure, and then like the sport management happy hour sessions. I think those are great. People are willing to help out there. So you got to be willing to put yourself out there, though, to be able to make those connections to begin with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you both have shared, a lot about your journeys, and we appreciate you being willing to come on and talk about all of this today with us. So as we kind of close out, I'm wondering if you guys would be willing to share some words of encouragement that you might have for anybody who's listening today who is either in the process of completing their education or maybe has that thought in the back of their mind of maybe I should do this, but is maybe struggling with some of those same thoughts of I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, or I failed last time. What words of encouragement might you have for them? And let's start with Amanda.
Gosh, I can remember in the last 2 years, probably 100 different times sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop, trying to get through homework, and really having to say to myself, I can do it, I can do this, I can do it, I can do this. So find a mantra, something to just carry you through, but then also know, I can't stress enough, life is too short. Go after those dreams. Do what's going to make you feel good, to make you feel, like you're serving your purpose. And then, add a mantra in. You can do it.
I love that. What about you?
Yeah, I'd just say if it's something you're even thinking about, just go ahead and give it a shot. Like even if it's just starting off as one class, seeing how it feels, and then you can go from there and find out if it's right for you. And I'd even encourage anyone, if you are going to chase a degree, have it be something you're fully interested in, passionate about, and that, because it makes classes so much easier. Like I said, when I first tried college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I had zero interest in the classes. Now that I know what I want to do, I find the classes fairly easy because it's something I find interest in.
Absolutely.
So in closing, I want to say thank you to both of you for being so transparent and so open and honest. And I think I learned something from both of you just, as a person who was a traditional college student, and even some of those struggles, hearing that you guys have gone through even later in life, and some of those things that you have battled with as far as, insecurities and whatnot. But so that was a huge takeaway for me, even from a professor standpoint, to think more intentionally about the people who are in my classrooms and some of the things that they're struggling with. So I once again appreciate both of you for that. So we were grateful for the opportunity that you guys took the time to come chat with us today.
Yes, thank you to all of our guests on the show, and also thank you to our listeners. We gained a lot of traction in the first season, and we're honored to now be well into season 2. So please, if you appreciate the show and if you love what we're doing, subscribe on whatever your podcast platform of choice is, and share this within your own communities. So thank you again for tuning in. Have a great day, and join us next time on Let's Talk About It.
Bye.
Bye.